Hello, and welcome to Tough Truths for Agency Business, a session at Winning Together we hope will help everyone in new business with some advice and guidance. Now, given the session is billed as Tough Truths, there may be a few points made that might sting a little, but it's all in the spirit of constructive criticism. I'm Branwell Johnson. I'm Director of Content at Propeller Group, and we've got a great panel I can't wait to bring on in a minute. But before we get to the panel, just a quick scene setter. It's been a tough year for agencies and new business teams, but there are signs of green shoots appearing, not least with the easing of the lockdown restrictions around hospitality and entertainment and other sectors. The recent set of ad association walk figures says the UK ad market is set to grow by more than 15% this year, compared with a 7.2% decline last year. And even Sir Martin Sorrell is, quote, extremely optimistic about the economic recovery and prospects for his own S4 Capital company. He's raised the revenue and gross profit targets for the company, so the new business teams over there must be limbering up for some heavy lifting. And anecdotal evidence suggests there's going to be a lot of pitch activity being primed for the second half of the year. So hopefully plenty of opportunities for all, if the right skills, structures and processes are in place for success and teams are backed all the way and helped by the rest of the agency. So we're heading rapidly to the second half of the year. Good moment to review strategy, plans and tactics, and whether some practices need changing or we are going to retain some of the practices that we've used in the last 12 months. And that's what this session's about. So please do join in with questions and comments. And now let's meet the panel. I'll ask them to introduce themselves when they appear. Hello, my panel.
Oh.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay. Hi, Zoe. Would you like to go first? Just tell us what your job is and what your remit is.
Yeah, sure. So I am Zoe Trimble, Head of Marketing at Suntory Beverage, GB&I business, and I look after Lucozade, so managing the all of the mix in terms of the short-term, longer-term view. So creative, media, innovation, sustainability, and all areas of the marketing mix, and the great team that's in place there.
Excellent. Martin, would you like to tell everyone who doesn't know who you are?
Sure. Martin Jones, Managing Partner at AR. I'm slightly nervous because in the top right-hand corner it tells you how many people are watching. I'm trying to work out whether it goes up or down as we're going through it. We're currently on 167 and it's going up. So if it starts going down halfway through, I'll take it. It's not great. Sorry, Managing Partner AR. I've only ever had 2 jobs in my life. One was I was new business director at the then J. Wolf Thompson for a number of years. So I know what life is like on your side. And for the last 20 years, I've been helping clients principally run pitches, tend to be in the creative arena. Some big clients like Zoe at Lucozade, DFS, Compare the Market, just trying to remember what's in the public domain and what isn't. So I spend a lot of time with clients listening to what they're saying and what they're not telling agencies.
All right. Well, if you see the numbers go down, give us one of your famous jokes, Martin.
I'll tell you a story. So
not that. Not now. Later. And James, finally, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Branwell. Hi, everybody. Always difficult to follow Martin in an intro, but James Taylor. I'm the Global Procurement Director at Diageo, with responsibility for all of our media, digital, and most recently e-commerce investment. And for anybody that doesn't know Diageo, we are the company that owns most of your favourite alcohol brands, including Johnny Walker, Smirnoff and Guinness. So nice to be here.
Excellent. Right. Welcome then, James. Just so everyone watching knows the setup, we're going to talk for about 30 minutes and then we will have time for Q&A. So don't be shy. Do put your questions in the Q&A box and I'll put them to the panel. But let's get straight into it. We've said there are apparent green shoots of recovery appearing. Just like to hear quickly from each of your own perspective. What are you seeing? What are you seeing with marketing budgets? What's a confidence level? Maybe James, you could kick us off.
Yeah, great. So look, we are seeing a positive view of and we've already seen some of the green shoots coming through in our particular industry. Obviously, from a UK perspective specifically, great news in the last week around the opening up of hospitality, the opening up of outdoor events. So we remain positive in general terms going forward, but about what the future holds as well. But in general, it's a positive way. And we are brave enough as an we will make investments where those opportunities exist. So from an investment and a relationship with our partners and our agencies, it should feel like it's a real optimistic place. We're really excited about the comeback of events and live experiences, a place obviously where we sell a lot of product. It's a real great opportunity of promoting all of our products and the things that we sell. But we also see new opportunities, right? I mentioned in my own role, e-commerce is now a part of my remit. It wasn't particularly big for our sector 12 months, 18 months ago. So as well as the coming back to some of the normality, actually loads of other new opportunities we're starting to see as well, Branwell.
Oh, that's reassuring to hear. Zoe, observations on the market at the moment?
Yeah, very similar, feeling really positive. I think from a Suntory point of view, we maintained investment where we could last year, but with brands like Lucozade Sport, where you're relying on those kind of occasions being there, we didn't invest. But there's real opportunity this year with those opening up and the sporting occasions coming back. So a great opportunity for us to look to drive those brands and get them kind of front of mind and tap into however the new sporting world and how people exercise is going to evolve, and make sure that we're kind of part of that, as that there's some elements that will stay, some elements that will change, and really kind of adapting to that and making sure that we can keep that kind of mental availability there with consumers. All
right. And Martin, from your perspective, talking a lot to agencies and clients, what's your view on the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, if you aren't mindlessly optimistic, you probably shouldn't be in new business. So I think it goes with the territory about being super optimistic about everything. Obviously, last year, from a pitching perspective, what was understandably quieter. I think it was down about, the figures we did, about 35 to 40% across the piece. Now, obviously, there's more optimism this year. Whether increased marketing budgets lead to increased number of pitches is to be seen, because I think there is a factor which is that historically most pitches, particularly I think in the creative space, have been caused by sort of a breakdown in relationship as much as anything else. They stop caring about me. They keep changing my team, etc. And what we obviously saw was during lockdown, current agencies looking after what they currently had, and so we're waiting to see whether that drip of concern actually does come through. And what we definitely are seeing is lockdown causing clients to not question, but just look at the capabilities that they have. Whereas I think previously it had been a lot of what we call distressed purchase, which is, I've got a problem here, I need to change that creative agency, PR agency, etc. What lockdown has done for a lot of clients, I think, is allowed them to look at the house that they've built over time and work out whether it's actually fit for purpose. So we suspect whether that's in-housing, whether we suspect that's new models, that will start to come through quite soon.
Okay, so if there are opportunities, you've got to be top of your game to take advantage of them, and hopefully we'll get some tips about that. I'd like to explore a little bit about how brands start drawing up a short list if they do have a project work or a full retainer work coming up. Zoe, if I could maybe start with you, just how do you even begin to filter through what kind of agencies you need and draw up a short list?
Be careful what you say, Zoe.
Obviously, the AO instrument not being paid at all, so no. But on Lucozade, we conducted a big pitch. It's about 18 months, 2 years ago now. We've been with a previous agency 10 years, and we were re-looking at the strategy and the growth model. So a really good point for us to go out and look for a new agency partner, and looking at also new models as well, having an internal agency turd, starting to think about how could that kind of model work. And so started off thinking, let's do it differently. So there was talk about putting a sign on the M4, given Lucozade's heritage with that, of like looking for a new agency. And actually it was kind of, are we just trying to be different for the sake of it? And also the time, the resource it takes to kind of filter that down. And I don't know all the agencies, and I don't know all of the new upcoming agency that should be on our radar. So that was, when we did reach out to the AAR, and I think really can help bring that expertise and navigate the process. And I think also linking in someone like the AAR shows that we're serious about the pitch, and actually, it's something that we are really seriously looking for an agency partner, and also ensuring the fairness. I think from a client point of view, you're really conscious through that process of trying to make sure that you are being fair to everyone. And quite often I was on the phone to Martin of like, oh, is it fair to have a call now? And, should I share this information with the agency? And it was just really good to have, somebody independent that can help us kind of not only through the process, but actually help in terms of giving and running the pitch in terms of how you would kind of want it to be. Okay.
I mean, you've said you don't know all the agencies. How do you yourself learn about agencies? I mean, I know, I'm sure Martin's a great help, but I'm guessing you do have your own antennae, or your team has its own antennae as well.
Yeah, and I think to us, it's the work that you see out there. And I think for agencies, it's that, I suppose, playing the longer term game in terms of actually building their brand as an agency. And that's what I kind of notice is, the great work that you see out there, and, and people that will talk about agencies that they kind of work with. So I think, that is where you see it, is out there in the real world of the results that are there.
Okay, James, if I can just bring you in, where does procurement come in when a brand or a marketer is beginning to think about a review or looking for a new partner to work with?
Yeah, well, we would see from a Diageo perspective actually that we're in the conversation with our marketing colleagues right at the start. So it's not really a case of coming into the process or being bought in. We would be part of the conversation. Up front, we would be knowing how our business is performing, and therefore whether we need to make changes, knowing a different skill set or a different opportunity that exists for our brand growth, and therefore a different bunch of skill sets. But we do, we see it as a key part of the procurement role to know the marketplace. Buyers, at the end of the day, you can only buy from a marketplace that you know and that you understand. So we do see ourselves as needing to gain knowledge and gain information around the marketplace, around the individuals, around business models. Zoe touched on insourcing and in-housing. That's an example of a different model that we needed to understand. And we spend a lot of time speaking to other peer group companies like Lucozade. We spend a lot of time reading trade press. We spend a lot of time understanding actually people moves, where talent's flowing across the agency, which is important for us. We do use some of the consultancies where appropriate, and we feel that we support both from an agency consultancy perspective, but also, people like Gartner and Forrester reports and all those kind of things, information sources for us. But there's this bit around, right? There's a bit about whether it's virtually in the world we've been living in the last 18 months, or whether it's in real life, and really actually getting into agency land and not being kind of too precious about sitting in a big office on the edge of the M4 or the A40 where we are as well, but actually really understand what's happening in the marketplace that we're buying from. What are the different business models? What are the different people? What are the different setups? What's the different location? Everything's not just in London anymore. So actually getting out of the London opportunities is important for us. It's a whole range of sources of information, but very much being almost a preemptive strike. So we want to feel like we know that marketplace way before our brand marketing colleagues start talking about reviews and pitches. So that's our approach.
I'm glad to see we all know our motorways and our A roads. Martin, what advice do you have for agencies in terms of building profiles so they actually get on the radar of both the marketers and yourself?
Well, fortunately for us, not everybody is quite as sophisticated as James and his team. So I think, you know, the Diageo procurement guys are brilliant and hugely aware of what you know, what's going on out there, etc. And there are, you know, like the guys at Suntory, you know, they keep up with what's going on. For a lot of marketers, procurement, etc., it only becomes of interest to them when it becomes relevant. So we often, when we talk to agencies, describe it as a bit like, you know, clients are sometimes, you know, if you've got a portfolio, that's, I think, slightly different. But if you clients are sometimes like people buying cars or fridge freezers, which is, you might do it once every 3 or 4 years and then you're really interested in it. But apart from that, you don't take that much notice of it. So I would suspect that a good 80 to 90% of clients, whether it's procurement or marketing, don't really, to be honest, think too much about agencies apart from their own, which actually makes it a much more level playing field than people think it is. So we, you know, partly because of what we do, we'll get clients come and say, is there anybody you particularly want to look at? And often they'll go, no, whoever fits the brief, etc. Because I think, you know, back to my, it's really interesting to them for a very short period of time, not all the time. Obviously interested in their current agencies, what's going on, but the minutiae and what's happening at, you know, Adam and Eve, New Commercial Arts, AMV, it sort of isn't really that interesting to them. I hate to tell everybody that, you know, there will always be ex-agency people who are fascinated by the village, but for a lot of people, it's not necessarily something that they're thinking about all the time.
Sorry, I was just going to agree, Martin. If it's just not kind of top of mind and focus at that point, and you know, if you've just appointed an agency as well, it's you're kind of building a relationship with them and focusing on that, and you don't want that kind of almost disloyalty of looking at another agency at that point, and so it can be hard to engage outside of when you are that kind of open-minded at that point. Would
I be right in thinking, no, you do kind of look for maybe thought leadership, Zoe, or read articles and so forth? And I know LinkedIn sometimes features quite heavily in these kind of discussions. Are you someone who wanders across LinkedIn and occasionally finds some interesting stuff from an agency that might pique your interest?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, for me has more value in terms of when you can, because that's also another demonstration in terms of what they're capable of, isn't it? Not just the work out there, but whether that's, you know, the strategic thinking and what they've kind of got to offer in that way. So I think it's much, you get a kind of taster for them and what they're about, whether that is in LinkedIn articles or talks that you might go to and hear there, and versus necessarily that kind of cold call of, can I meet with you next week to tell you about us, when you're not necessarily looking at that. And it's kind of that, it might not necessarily be something you then think about immediately, but it's kind of seeds kind of those agencies in the back of your mind for when it might kind of come up that you might need them.
Okay, so a kind of a drumbeat of profile is probably a good thing. I mean, James, you've said that you get out there, well, we haven't been able to get out there for a while. So how have you kind of monitored the thinking, or the innovation, or the entrepreneurship that agencies have been showing?
Late. So again, you know, performance, things that are out there, campaign that are on the remain really kind of important, I think, to promoting visibility of things like LinkedIn you mentioned are incredibly powerful, I think, to be able to see new things and new innovations that are coming out. You know, I think there's a big piece though around trying to find the points of difference. So what are we seeing that is a unique thing or a new opportunity, as opposed to more of the same, or the same stuff that's slightly better in some instances, but actually pulling out some of that new thinking, newer models is actually the important bit, as opposed to new people, new names, new agency brands. So it's the thinking behind the agency brand out on it. And I won't lie, it's tougher to do virtually. There's no two ways around it. I think you do have to work harder. I think you do have to, from a client's perspective, it can be less interesting listening to a pitch or listening to a sales kind of call on a Zoom, or rather than the real life bit where you're trying to create the chemistry and create the understanding of a business. So I do think it's been tougher over the last 12 to 18 months. I think it's the same sources of information, but just in a slightly different context.
Well, you've mentioned the virtual world. Let's step into the virtual world a little bit more then. I'm particularly interested, around the pitch process for those of us who've experienced virtual pitching. Lockdown conditions have changed things. Martin, how has it been from your perspective, agencies pitching? What have we learned in the last 12 months? Because I'm sure virtual pitching isn't going to go away.
Yeah, and the good news is we're at 167, so we're obviously saying something right here. Yeah, virtual pitching. What's good that will come out of lockdown, I think, is the fact that we won't go back to the same old ways of pitching. I think that the face-to-face, the chemistry, which sort of dominates, to be honest, a lot of agency appointments of, I want to work with this team of people, will still fundamentally be hugely important. And one would never, if you wave a magic wand, you probably want your chemistry, your original chemistry meetings to be face-to-face, because why wouldn't you? And you probably want your pitch presentations to be face-to-face, etc. So the two ends of the process, I think we will probably end up going back to the ways that we've always done it, which have proved to be incredibly successful. The middle bit, I think, is where things will change. I think the need to do a briefing, a work in progress, face to face. I don't think we think that anymore, because what we've seen is that people are very capable of doing that part of the process on Zoom. It's not necessarily required to travel, etc., in order to do that part of it. I think, to be honest, I think some agencies have adapted incredibly well to it, and I think some other agencies haven't. Have tried to just basically replicate what they used to do to varying degrees. So we'll learn a lot from it. There are always a few tricks that you can learn from, from how to do Zoom pitches better, I suspect. I think that the key one is probably more FaceTime and less presentation. So
okay.
The agencies that can actually do pitches, credentials meetings, chemistry meetings, where they are not relying on a slide where they can't see people, etc., are always, I think, going to do better, because it's still chemistry face to face. You can't. Zoom will not make chemistry if it's not there. If it's not there, Zoom is. And I think if it's there, it can a little bit get in the way. But what you find is that it's as much about the chemistry between the agency team as much as it is between the client and the agency. I think that's certainly one of the things that's caused a few problems. And I do think that I've done quite a lot all on Zoom, and I've done a couple recently where it was partly on Zoom, and then the pitch presentations were actually in person. And what's really interesting is watching people struggling to get back into this world, that people have forgotten how to interact with each other, etc. I've been into London a few times, and I've forgotten how to cross the road, let alone anything else. So it's getting people back into that rhythm of pitching interactivity to come across as a team is something that I think everybody will start to need to remind themselves about quite soon.
Rehearse.
Yeah.
James, have you got any build out on your experience of virtual conversations with agencies and what we might take forward and what we should leave behind at this point?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Martin just said. It's not going to go away. There's no way we're going to jump back to a place where every kind of conversation is going to be face to face. But I do agree it's the middle bit where there's a real efficiency of this process. I think the client take the time to make sure the briefing's right, and where possible, bringing the brand to life, bringing the excitement of an opportunity to life in a face-to-face briefing on Zoom, and at the back end, that final piece where you get really into the detail, where possible, face-to-face. But the middle bit where, you know, you're struggling for 3 weeks to get a Q&A session with people in the same place, the ability to do that in a 15-20 minute call on a video conference, I think much more efficient to do that middle bit. I think it's actually really become more easy to share thinking, whether it be or pricing or creative output, on a quick call to kind of go, here's what we're thinking, and you can get that conversation going really quickly with the use of the technology. So that middle bit, there's a huge big efficiency in it. I also agree with what Martin said and about the casting of an agency. This has been a critical change, right? That in a face-to-face room, some people might come in for a very specific reason, and they're part of the pitch team, and they're there for their reason. On a Zoom or on a video conference, you're almost given equal spacing on a floor, right? And it becomes quite noticeable if somebody's not contributing to that conversation, or if they're uncomfortable with their sub because they don't have the natural or another part of their agency. So I think the casting of those sessions and making sure really everybody has an absolutely defined and clear role from an agency perspective is the biggest shift that we're seeing by doing this on virtually. And then my other bit is agencies equally demanding of attention from clients. Again, it's far more noticeable when a client switches off a camera or is on their phone or doing something. So it's also important that agencies make the same expectation of clients in a virtual pitch. And I think that's a braveness for agencies to make sure that they are asking for that and demanding that in the process as well. And the good clients won't mind that demanding ask. So I think that's a different piece that shifted in the relationship between the agency and the client in a virtual world.
Yeah, there's no hiding place on Zoom. It is what you know. So you're absolutely acutely aware of who's saying something, who's to James's point, which they might get away with it when they're in a room, but you'll watch because you're just watching how people's body language, has that person said anything, what they're doing, etc. So that casting is incredibly important, and I think consistency as well of ensuring that the clients have relationships with people, well, not with agencies. It's a group of people that they get to know who happen to work for X agency. So the more consistency that you can have, whether Zoom or in person, I think it's really important. I suppose one watch out if people are looking for advice is that pitches are not ideal. They're quite unusual. They're a mixture of theatre and capability and all sorts of things. But I go back to the fact that most clients will still probably go into a pitch with a hierarchy of I like them a little bit more than I like them, and I'm really hoping that they do well. And so just making sure that you aren't. Well, there's a bit of excitement in pitches, which is really tricky to sort of quantify. And I'm looking forward to seeing them again. And I think the danger with Zoom is people default to treating it like existing clients and go, oh, they've offered another meeting. I'll have another meeting with them because I can do, thinking it's a good thing. I'm not sure it always is. Because that little bit of excitement, I wonder what they're going to come back with. So rather than sort of, I'm going to reveal absolutely everything, and the client wants another work in progress meeting, I suppose the counsel would sometimes be, just keep the powder dry a little bit, because there is a little bit of theatre in this about that great reveal. Don't underestimate it.
Oh, the great reveal. Zoe, just to bring you in, when we do get back to a place where with face-to-face pitches may take place, what are you hoping to see? Are you hoping anything will have changed, or do you expect or want things to be presented the way they were previously and pitched us to be the way they were previously?
Yeah, I just build on what Martin and Joe's talking about of this, the importance of people. I think that is the most important thing, and that will continue to be. And I think when you go into it, it is looking for that relationship of people you can work with, people you can have those honest conversations with, and do they fit with the culture of your company? Like, you know, the key things I'm thinking is, could I see them just hanging around the office in that, you know, and if we need to, could they come and chat to the CEO, and really kind of seeing that fit in that phase, because I think that is the kind of grounding for it. And I think the passion for the brand, don't underestimate that. You really want to see that they really want to work on your business, and that's where that, you know, the show hands come in. Is actually, it's just about showing a bit of passion and excitement, and the fact that they really, you know, want to work on your brands. And from a creative point of view, actually I'll use a Martin phrase of it, looking for that creative height. It's not necessarily looking for this is the ad we're going to buy, but you want to really kind of see that they're showing that kind of stretch, and so that they can really kind of come with that kind of excitement factor for your brand. It's really exciting hearing someone else be as excited about your brands as you are. Like, it's really kind of rewarding getting that kind of two-way conversation back.
Oh, for sure. A passion is so important. But James, maybe I could just bring you in a bit, because I wouldn't mind a quick chat about value as well. Obviously, this, you know, the excitement, the passion, the creativity are all part of it. But from your point of view, wearing a procurement hat, how do you approach assessing the value of what an agency brings? And creativity, obviously, is one very tough thing to assess.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be really blatant with it. Right, and again, I wouldn't be doing my procurement job if I said it wasn't. But it really is only part of the piece, right? And we are always looking for ideas, for process. To Zoe's point, who can help us unlock the conditions for, right? And if we can do that, and it costs us more money, and the growth is higher, that's a complete right trade-off from a value perspective. And we spend an awful lot of time, again, procurement sometimes get labeled as the bad guys in the industry, but we spend an awful lot of time talking and recognizing that all agencies bring to us, because they have a wider view. They understand the total consumer. They know what the competition's doing, right? More than sometimes we know. So that world view that agencies bring, and therefore the help, the idea, the creative approach bring to our brand, absolutely would outweigh a cheaper offering, right? So yes, price is important, and my procurement, I didn't say it wasn't, but it can never be the single view on this. So more and more what we're looking for, as well as price, as well as value of cost, is like, how's this going to improve our efficiency as a business? How's this going to improve our structure, our way of thinking, our speed to market, our understanding of our consumers? All of this kind of piece has value. Can I put pound signs against it? Probably not. But we're trying to drive to, and the bigger conversation that we're trying to have at the moment, which is, you know, feels pretty exciting. Okay,
I'm going to ask one more question. Go on.
I've been doing this for 20 years, and I genuinely have never come across, and it may be that it's the sort of clients who value agencies that we tend to deal with, but I've never found price got in the way. People want the agency that they want, and they want to do the best deal with them from both sides' perspective, but it's so rarely is it actually a factor. I think it's a factor, but it's not necessarily a driver of it. You go with the people you want to work with, and then you do the best deal with them. And I think that's what the best procurement people will know instinctively.
Yeah, and I don't, hopefully my procurement team at Suntory won't come to saying this, but I think there's a realism as well of value. You know, what is the value? And I think lower price can sometimes signal lower value, and I think, and that is a kind of a truth that I would say. And also I think being truthful and realistic from a price point of view, like, rather than necessarily promising the world, like, actually what is, you know, the real kind of true value in terms of what you're offering.
There's also an advantage of having procurement people involved as well, is they're sort of quite happy to have the difficult conversations. So when we were doing Lucozade, and you know, to be honest, the worst part of any pitch is actually telling people that they haven't got it. And nobody ever puts their hands up to go, yeah, I'll make that call, etc. And procurement people, you know, without making a sweeping statement, are just a bit more pragmatic. So they go, yeah, I'll just tell them they haven't got it. Whereas I think me, the marketers, go, oh God, you came a close second. It was always a bit difficult. Well, they'll just go, well, I'll just tell them. You know, so I think sometimes that pragmatism is really helpful in pitch processes.
Okay. Thanks for that. I'm going to ask one more question, which follows on from that, and then I'll move on to audience questions. So, audience, please start typing questions. Very quick question to you all, really. How do you like contact to be maintained with an agency if they're not the agency appointed? I mean, do you encourage other agencies on the short list to stay in touch? Martin, what would you say on that?
To be honest, I think it so much depends on the. It's what I think, you know, when you came a genuine second. I think you know that as opposed to sort of a token. If you think the chemistry is there, then I think by all means stay in touch, because the chances are that if someone goes through a pitch process and they end up appointing somebody, and for whatever reason, and they're quite rare, to be honest, it doesn't work. Then after 6 months, they're not going to hold another pitch. They will probably go back to the people that they felt most comfortable with and who stayed in touch. I think the other element is that agencies stay in touch with people. Not, you know, so if Zoe, God forbid, goes somewhere else, I would expect her, you know, people to get in touch with her, you know, because they liked her and she's gone somewhere else. So it's about people. It's not necessarily about clients and agencies.
And thinking about the specific pitch of, you know, some of the agencies that weren't successful, I have gone on to recommend them. So even though it wasn't necessarily right for this, I think, you know, they're absolutely agencies that, you know, you would recommend. And I think, you know, keeping in touch of, it's a small world, marketing and advertising, like really is. So I think, you know, it's always good to kind of keep those bridges. And
there's also an element of asking for feedback, because again, what you look for is which agencies actually go back and sort of say, what can we learn from this? Is there anything? And the agencies who are slightly more blaming the client for making a bad decision, you know, are slightly more arrogant about it and just say, well, they got it wrong, etc. They're never going to be as successful, I think, as those who try and, you know, be empathetic, stay in touch, rather than blame the client for making a bad decision.
Okay, all right then. Well, thank you for that. I'm sure that's very useful to the audience. I'm going to bring on some audience questions now. We've talked about cultural fit. We've talked about casting, but overall, as an agency, as an entity, and a client as an entity, how much does agency diversity matter to brands now? You know, is it part of the RFP or the RFI? You know, it's a good question from Katie Howell. James, have you got a view on this, or can you help us along on this?
It's hugely important, right? We are very public about some of our D&I objectives, but it's as simple as this: we're looking for people that mirror our consumer base, right? And our consumer base are a diverse bunch of cultures, geography, ages, genders, and everything. We fully believe that the people that work in our organisation, the people that work within our agency partners, should be a replication of the consumer base that we're targeting, which is broad and wide.
Can I chip in? Branwell?
Yeah, of course.
I think that what's really interesting is we are for the first time seeing it being overtly asked. People are asking about it. Historically, I think people haven't necessarily asked, but have been surprised when they see yet another load of white blokes in a meeting. I think it didn't occur to people historically. Now I think, for obvious reasons, it is being asked in, you know, as a question, part of a criteria. The most important thing that we think is, to a certain extent, you can't. It's more important to know what you're doing about changing rather than where are you now? What percentage have you got? Yes, it's important, but it is more interesting to know what plans are you bringing in order to bring in a more diverse agency, what it might be, because to suddenly instantly change is a bit unfair, I think, on agencies to suddenly miraculously change. So what are you doing to change? But it's definitely something that is being asked, not 100% of the time, but certainly an awful lot of time.
Zoe, does this resonate?
I was going to say one build on that, because it's really important. It's not a superficial ask, right? And therefore, the agencies, and we have seen this, that present a lineup that they think is what the lineup we want to see, and it's not then difficult to delve down a couple of other layers and a couple of other parts of the business that see that actually that's a front that. So to your point, Martin, we're not expecting everyone to have solved this in day one, but the direction of travel, the interventions that are being made, the leadership involvement that's happening to change cultures and organisations, right down to like recruitment and HR process and all that kind of piece. So it can't be a front; it has to be a real deliverable. That's my build on that piece.
Does that resonate with you, Zoe, in your experience?
Completely, 100%. And the other bit Martin was talking about, like in the meeting rooms, I think the other piece that I remember is actually, if it's something that an agent's particularly strong at, it's not necessarily always replicated even in like the reels, like the amount of reels that you see where they're talking about diversity and inclusion, and actually it's all white blokes that they're putting kind of at the forefront of it. So I think it's making sure that what you say and what you do definitely kind of marry between it. So complete, but absolutely like being truthful in terms of where you are and the journey that you're going on.
Okay, a different kind of question from Sergey, who's asking, how can small agencies, maybe with a head count of only 10 to 20 people, get on the radar of procurement and marketing? James, how does a small operation get attention?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no strategy that for us, and I'm sure many other businesses, that says you need to be a big agency, right? So you go back to, we look at ideas, we're looking for people, we're looking for efficiency of our process, we're looking for opportunities for brand growth, and that doesn't always come from the big agency. So no two ways around that in the way that we say it. But I think Martin was saying this when my line dropped, and apologies for that. And by the way, that's real life. That happens. That's like the tube being late or delayed. No problems with real life things like that happening in the virtual world. But there is a bit about people here as well, right? And many people leave big agencies to go and work for small agents. Many small agencies get bought by bigger agencies, and there's a huge piece an individual person and their view and their attitude and their ideas as much as the size of the agency. And we actively and proactively kind of actually, have a little bit of our kind of research program that specifically goes out to independent, smaller agencies to make sure that we do understand how they operate differently and how they can think differently and how they can be more agile. So no different to the big agencies is my one.
I think there's a simple tip, which is talk about client benefit, not agency feature. I mean, it's as simple as that. Is why would the client care about this? And apologies to those of you who have heard me bang on about it before. But I remember a client once said to me, he said, the trouble is you go talk to agencies and they tell you what they've done for other people. They show you work that they've done for other people. And he said, it's a little bit like being shown photographs of other people's children. They're lovely. I just don't care about them half as much as you do. And I think it's a great analogy, which is clients want to know how you can help me. Not necessarily what you've done for somebody else. So if you're a small agency and you've got a viewpoint on, a particular consumer or particular clients are quite interested in that. What they're not so interested in is look what I've done for somebody else.
Yeah, that's a fantastic and brutal, tough truth about other people's children, Martin. Zoe, if you work with small agencies, and did you have a good experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you say, it comes down to the people, the relationships, the culture that you kind of work with, and I think it can be getting on the radar. I think if if I'm really honest, it might be different from a procurement point of view, but I don't engage with cold calls. Like I get 20 to 30 emails a day, and you just can't. So whereas if someone comes with, I've got this idea on Lucozade, you're like, okay, like, and let me send it through, and not necessarily push for that kind of face to face, but just seeding that kind of knowledge and understanding. I think it can really help.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Thanks. So we are at the end of our time. I'm going to ask you very quickly just one tough truth from each of you for the audience. It can be a do or a don't. James, what's your tough truth, do or don't?
Maybe it's a personal one, but this is around procurement teams and procurement functions, right? See them as an enabler, right? And more brand marketeers are so busy with running big businesses and P&Ls and great marketing that the procurement role is coming more to the forefront of being the window to the world, the window to the external world. So my big advice is use your procurement guys or good procurement guys as enablers, and kind of be really clear. There are no separate procurement objectives, right? I only win my team if Diageo through our brands win. So that's the piece for me. It's a single-minded business outcome that we're trying to drive, and procurement guys can be friends as new business guys.
Excellent. And Zoe, one quick tough truth, do or don't?
I'd say don't, building on Joe's, but don't engage cold with brand teams in terms of sharing that.
Okay, and Martin, you get the last quick word.
The last one. Listen, I've written about 32 of these, but if I have to choose one, I'd say trust your instinct. If you, I mean, pitching, as we all know, is intensive, emotional sort of things. The advice would be, if you are thinking about participating in a pitch from an agency side, and you can look at all the criteria about why you shouldn't do. If you think you're going to get to the end of it and get told you haven't won it, and somebody says, I knew we should never have gone for that, then listen to them, because the chances are their instincts are probably quite good. You know, so I would certainly listen. You know, great new business people have great instincts.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. You all deserve a huge virtual round of applause. Fantastic panel. We could have gone for a long time. I hope it's been useful for everyone watching. I hope everyone watching gets out and smashes the targets they're being set. So thank you again, Zoe, James and Martin, for being on this panel.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.